wanted to run the channel alignment screen for a little bit because, you know, it might be a little Math Squad heavy in here for a few minutes. I'm not going to take a lot of time to do this, but what I wanted to do was talk a little bit about very specifically why I think or feel like the inclusion of the Succubus skin for Kerrigan in Heroes of the Storm is problematic. And I know that's a term that gets thrown around a lot on like Tumblr and shit, but it's got its own purpose. There's some meaningfulness to it, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So let's take a look at the skin in question, right? Let's see what's caused this these feelings. So there's our friend Kerrigan. She's a succubus. So here's the thing. So the reason why I'm doing this, I made a remark a while ago in playing Heroes that I would be willing to play basically any character, any skin, because you know, if someone would pay for it, if someone would donate, I'd be happy to play them, because, you know, you guys want to see me play different heroes, you want to play me see different skins on stream. And so I guess, as I'm not sure if you know, it was intended as a joke initially, but Halfwing, one of my mods, said, well, what if we buy you the Succubus Kerrigan, because people have heard me complain about her inclusion in the game before. And so I said, okay, fine. You know what? I'll play Succubus Kerrigan if I'm allowed to talk about it first. If we're allowed to discuss how the succubus is a sexist trope, especially in this particular instance. So you can blame Halfwing for this. Don't blame him. Thank him, because I think it's an interesting conversation to have. Now, keep in mind, I'm not going to be talking about succubi across all media. I want to talk about succubi, specifically this succubus, and in Warcraft, how succubi are portrayed and what that might mean in media. And I want to talk about why Kerrigan being put in this costume constitutes, for me, a sexist undermining of the character of Kerrigan to begin with. Keep in mind that like I know more about like gender theory probably than I do about Warcraft lore or StarCraft lore. So, you know, I know enough. I know I have a layman's understanding of the lore behind a lot of this stuff. And all of this kind of goes to say that this isn't, I mean, this isn't really a discussion. I want you to discuss it too. I want you to talk amongst yourselves about it, because this is the thing, like, this is a monologue. I can talk to you, and there's a delay, and I can see what you're saying, but it's not about... This is just my feelings on a particular topic, based on my experience as a person. For example, if you're curious about more of this, talk to a woman. Talk to somebody with a better understanding of what the experience of being objectified is like, right? Don't take my word as the 100% gospel. I'm going to make mistakes talking about this stuff because I don't know everything there is to know. I mean, no one does, right? So the other thing that I wanted to talk about is let's keep in mind that it's okay to like problematic stuff, right? Like acknowledging that sexist Succubus Kerrigan exists doesn't mean we can't like StarCraft. That doesn't mean we can't like Warcraft. It doesn't mean I can't play this character and like it, right? I can't be like, oh, that's cool aesthetically, like this is fun. All those things are possible, but I have to acknowledge, and this is a thing that I think is really important to recognize, I have to acknowledge that yes, it's sexist. And that it is problematic. It's a problematic thing. So that's an element of this, right? And let's also talk about how I want you to keep in mind that sexist content doesn't make a game or a country sexist, right? Doesn't make a company sexist, doesn't make a person sexist. If I say one sexist thing, that doesn't make you, it's not an identity, right? So Blizzard isn't sexist, Heroes of the Storm isn't inherently sexist. It's just, this is a part of the game. This is an element of the game that's not... I don't like its inclusion, and I think that it makes the game harder to accept. So let's talk about the succubus. Like, what's a succubus in Warcraft, right? It's a demon, right? It's demon, inherently bad. There's no, as far as I understand, no redeeming qualities in the eyes of the general populace of the Warcraft universe that demons are okay, right? That they're like, yay, demons are great. Even people who truck with demons, like warlocks and stuff, are like, they're not safe. We have to bind them with magic, right? Okay, so a succubus is a demon. A succubus is a woman, inherently. There's no male succubi. There's incubi, but not in this game. Not in Warcraft, right? No incubus? Okay. So it's a woman and an evil woman. A Dungeons and Dragons style chaotic evil woman character, right? So those things are inherent. They're slaves, right? When we see them, they're slaves. I don't know, like, I can't remember if I ever saw like a free succubus roaming around. They must theoretically exist. But in the context of these, what we're looking at, a succubus is a slave, an enslaved woman who is evil, right? And then the other thing, and this is questionable, I would argue that they are sexually oriented, right? Like, you could have women demons who are enslaved by warlocks, but look at the way that she's dressed. Look at the pose of her body. Think about the succubi in Warcraft, right? They're like, they make sexy giggling sounds, and they crack their whips, and they're meant to be. There's an implication that they're sex objects, right? That they're like, you're supposed to be titillated by them. That's a thing. So the reasons why, if we look at this stuff, why that's problematic, right? Because there's the explicit use of a succubus, there's the implicit stuff about what a succubus sort of is and how it functions. So it's reductive and objectionable because what it does is it says, okay, so this is a sex demon shaped like a woman, and the implication there is that those things are connected, right? That her sexuality is a weapon because she's evil. She uses it to like, she has to be bound by magic or else she's dangerous, right? So you have to look at that from a cultural perspective. Are there examples of sexually forward or sexually liberated female characters in Warcraft? Like, do we get to see Jaina, hit on someone? Do we see sexually aggressive women in World of Warcraft that aren't in this position, that are not also magical slaves, right? And why do you need to enslave a succubus? Well, you need to enslave them because they're dangerous. Sexual women, dangerous. Evil demons, dangerous, right? So you have to enslave them with magic, because if you don't, they're going to use their sexiness as a weapon against us. And the idea that writing a character who's a woman and who's empowered sexually as a demonic entity and as a dangerous weapon who needs to be bound by a more powerful man, that's where it starts to get problematic, right? So, it's not, this is the thing, is like, it's not any one thing, but it's the implied stuff underneath. And I'm not even saying that Blizzard is doing this on purpose. I'm not saying that Blizzard's like, haha, women are evil. Sexy women are also evil. Let's make it so that we can bind these horrible sex women to our cause. They're saying they're okay with continuing the idea that that you can have these female characters in a media situation who are evil and whose sexuality is dangerous, and that the appropriate response is to bind them and to control them. And the thing is here is that it's not dangerous and it's not objectionable because it's obvious. It's because it's subtle, right? It's that if the characters treat this woman character like an object, if the game portrays sexualized women as objects, then the implication there is that it's a rewarded behavior. It's okay. And like the portrayal of a woman as a sexual tool in Warcraft isn't inherent, right? It's funny because it's like I wouldn't say this is 100% true, but it would almost be more straightforward if you bound a succubus so that you could use her as a sex object, so you could have sex with her. But they're out of context. Like, you're summoning a succubus to, like, charm your enemies and to fight them, and I get that she's the CC version of the demons, but the issue here is that this is the only thing that we see. It's exactly the same as how monks are portrayed in Dungeons and Dragons, because often what you end up with is the monk, if you're not thinking about it, if you just look at the book, and I'm talking about early editions of D&D, the monk is the only Oriental character in the party. So you have a Western fighter, a Western wizard, a Western cleric, and you have Hong Kong Fooey, right? You have, like, the only Asian knows Kung Fu and can jump around and spin kick people and, like, is a trope. So the sexually empowered woman in this case is evil demon sexy woman. And I get, like, again, I get that it's separated from the game. It's only a skin. But let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about why it's offensive to put this skin on Kerrigan specifically. Now, again, I'm not a scholar of StarCraft lore, but my impression of Kerrigan is that she's kind of an inversion of sexist tropes. And we talked about this a little while ago when we were talking about gender roles for characters. And that I think that Kerrigan appears to me, from my perspective, to be like a tough, martially oriented character, right? She doesn't shy away from violence. She's tough. She's a badass in the way that we often see men to be badasses. She's an analog with her, and Jim Raynor are on even terms for most of the game, right? Like, Jim is afraid of her, and when she's the Queen of Blades, he respects her and like wants her to he wants to protect her, but not in a way that, like, makes her an object or limits her, right? I think he respects her as a combat character and on his level. And their power relationship is sort of more inverted as time goes on. Now, there's more complex issues there. There's obviously her story is longer. But what I find frustrating about this is that instead of making a succubus character, they break a character that already has empowerment. They take Kerrigan and they say, fuck it, we're gonna put a sexy bikini on her and turn her into a, like, they turn her into a sex demon. And that feels to me like a demotion, right? Like, cheapening the character, making her a titillating spectacle. It feels, I don't know, it just feels reductive, and it feels like a step backwards, right? So, I don't know. I mean, again, like, keep in mind that, like, this is problematic content, and that stuff exists everywhere. It exists in the world, right? It's a thing in media, and you don't have to disagree with it, right? You don't necessarily have to hate. I don't hate Succubus Kerrigan, right? Like, I think visually it relies on a lot of, like, really cheap tricks to seem sexy, but, like, whatever, fine. I get that you can enjoy problematic stuff. And I also get that the devs didn't think about this. I think that's a valid point. That the devs they didn't put her in because they want to sexually objectify women. It's that's a given in a lot of media, that it's okay and nobody thinks about it. So what I'd really like you to do is think about this stuff not as, like, oh, Adam just wanted to, like, blab on about social justice or whatever, and I'm going to dismiss it because, you know, he's a social justice warrior and whatever, it's all politics. But the thing is that objectification of women is a real thing, and whether any given instance of it is offensive to you, is up to you. But consider why you feel the way that you feel, right? Like maybe even if just for one extra minute you think, hang on, like let's examine this from another point of view. If you Google one thing because of this, instead of just dismissing it outright, that's all that matters to me, is like that people think about this stuff. So, you know, I encourage you to talk about it. I encourage you to disagree with me. I encourage you to engage with other fans of these games and talk about how people are portrayed in games, right? So that's it, man. That's the thing, right? It's not about breaking down some horrible evil and never enjoying sex in media, because sex is great. It's fun. It's a good thing. It's about creating an environment where everyone can feel treated fairly in the way that they want to engage with content, and that we're not making sexually empowered women a negative stereotype that needs to be bound up by magic. So, I mean, that's it, right? Like, I could talk about more of this, and I would be happy to. If you want to start a conversation on the subreddit, please, like, go and do that. I'm not here to, like, protect anybody or, like, defend anybody, or I'm also not here to, like, cast stones. I'm not going to stop playing Blizzard games because of this. I just think that, like, I mean, think about it, right? Just think about it. You know what else you should think about?